hello, everybody, and welcome to today's panel discussion, where we're talking about the new era of the graph. My name is Nick Hansen. I am Ecosystem Lead at the Graph Foundation, and I'm also the host of the GRTIQ podcast. I'm incredibly humbled to be moderating today's panel discussion. So for anybody that isn't aware, on November 7th, the Graph Foundation, in collaboration with core developer teams, as well as other core devs working in the ecosystem, released its new and updated R&D roadmap, which is called the New Era of the Graph. And it's an incredible vision for the future of the protocol. And we're going to take some time today to talk about it. So to help introduce and educate members of the community about what the new era is all about, I'm hosting a panel discussion today with members from the core dev team. So to get started, I want to thank the Edge and Node marketing team that helped coordinate and plan today's call. And I want to introduce each of the panelists that are joining me today. So I want to welcome Adam Fuller, product manager at Edge and Node, Alex Bourget, co-founder and CTO at StreamingFast, Chris Wessels, founder at GraphOps, Eva Balin, director of the Graph Foundation, Matthew Darwin, chief infrastructure officer at Pinex, Tegan Klein, CEO and co-founder at Edge and Node, Yuri Goldstein, CEO and founder at The Guild, Vincent Wen, who is the engineering manager at Masari, Yaniv Tal, founder at Geo, and Alexei Asiman, lead developer at Semiotic Labs. So I want to welcome all of the panelists, and I want to jump right into today. And I want to start with you, Eva Balin. Let's talk about context and what we are talking about when we talk about the new era. So can you just provide an overview of what the new era is and how it's structured?
Thanks, Nick. So the new era of the graph is really a roadmap to set up this next stage of the graph's existence, which is really growing a flourishing universe of data and making it possible to serve all sorts of data, not just subgraphs and GraphQL queries, but different types of users, different query languages, all of the fun things that people want related to Web3 data, and really opening the door for new ways for people to contribute. So expanding the way that indexers scale, even thinking about knowledge graphs and expanding the DevX and UX, and really growing what the graph means. So, this new era really sets up the next stage of what the data needs are for Web3 for the next cycle in Web3 development, and also, listening to our users and what they've wanted over the last few years.
So Eva, one follow-up question. Whenever you talk about roadmap, one of the first questions is timeline. How should people be thinking about the timeline associated with New Era and how it'll all kind of lay out?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we think of New Era or this launch as sort of the beginning of the new era. There's some things in the roadmap that you'll see we've been working on for a bit. We've already gotten started, and there's others that are very fresh and will take several years. So we really think about this as a journey, and some things will come sooner rather than later. But anyone who's interested can actually check the webpage that the roadmap is hosted on, and you can keep track of status of very specific milestones, not just the overall epic. And a great way to get involved will be checking the forum and GIPs as they come up.
So I want to double click on that. I do want to let anybody who's confused or doesn't know about the new era quite yet, there is an official blog post that you can go read. You can join the Graphs Discord. There's plenty of people there can answer your questions. And so a lot of resources available for anybody that wants to do a deeper dive. 5 core objectives to the roadmap. And objective number 1 is a world of data services. So I think it would be really interesting just to start there. So maybe I'll go to you, Alex Bourget, but why on a new roadmap, a new vision for the graph is objective number 1 about creating a world of data services?
Nick, you know why? Because people want all sorts of things. There's a lot of data systems out there. There's a lot of needs. People have all sorts of wonky needs. It's fascinating. The data that goes onto a blockchain is always valuable. It transacts value. And it's always, you don't lose your time writing into a blockchain. There's nothing, useful to say. But then you want to build all sorts of things on top of that. Like you can want a graph database, you can want a streaming engine, you can want to put that in some SQL database and all sorts of data systems. So people have different needs, and we want to address them all. We want the graph to have them all, to all the use cases, all the things that extend out from the blockchain into whatever. And I know, what do you think? Is that true? Like when people want all these things? So we want to bring it, and we're working towards that.
Tegan, what does it say about the future of the graph, how it fits into the Web3 and what its vision is for how it fits into Web3 and to serve users?
Yeah, absolutely. As Eva and Alex mentioned, the graph is kind of coming for all data to be that one-stop shop when it comes to all data needs on the internet. But what's different here is that, no one company or group of companies can, corrupt that data or own and control that data. So that's very different from the way that the internet operates today. And we want to empower indexers and other participants in the graph ecosystem to serve these different data needs. So we're going beyond just subgraphs, which have become an industry standard today, to Substreams, Firehose, SQL, LLMs, you name it. Thanks to all of the amazing core developers in the ecosystem, we're able to tackle so many different data needs. And I'm super excited. So what does that mean for the future? It's just solidifying the graph as the internet's unbreakable foundation for all data.
It's a reflection, I guess, of like the industry as a whole as well. I think when we started out, Subgraphs brought this whole new capability to Web3 developers, unlocked types of apps that couldn't be built before. But then, as people have seen, since Subgraphs came about, there's been an explosion of new use cases, new apps, people pushing the boundaries, and when people push the boundaries, they need better solutions. They need new things, and I think we see this in the broader ecosystem. We also see this in the core developer ecosystem. So, like, I'm super inspired by the way in which Masari are pushing forward how we need to think about analytical use cases. And I'm always inspired by the Guild and the way that they think about GraphQL as this like super rich thing. So like subgraphs, there's still a huge amount of scope to extend and develop subgraphs further. That's a big part of the story as well. There's also these whole new avenues which we can start to unpick, particularly with the firepower we've got amongst the core developers.
So double clicking into this objective, Alexi, maybe I'll throw it to you because Semiotic's doing so much work on AI and different components of that. One thing that readers will notice is that there's the introduction of AI-assisted querying with LLMs. What can you tell us about that?
A trendy subject, right? Everybody asking for the Graph GPT, right? For a year now, I think almost, right? Everybody's like, well, when can we use the GPT for the graph? Well, so in terms of the queries we're seeing, so today the graph is mostly used by dApp developers, maybe a little bit also by power users, and so we see a lot of the queries are really they're not quite machine generated, but let's say that there's a template on the dApp interface, and we see the same queries again and again, right? Because we're really like a backend for dApp interfaces, and we really expect that our LLM Web3 assistants will facilitate access to a much wider audience, right? Humans, and yeah, so the gist of what we're working on, just to give an idea of how those future queries will look like, is that we're building a product that's called Agent C, and it's a no-code workflow that lets you index whatever contract you want, and then ask natural questions about it, about that data. The indexing is extremely fast thanks to streaming fast. And you can very quickly get in and just ask questions like, okay, what's the swap volume on last Christmas of ETH, for example? Very human-like questions, right? We have bigger ambitions with that product, and we're working on data aggregation, such as you can aggregate data from multiple contracts, so therefore multiple dexes, as a more real example. And we also want to be able to trigger on-chain interactions using natural language, so that's more in line with the overall idea of intents. And yeah, just overall making it easier for humans that just want to speak to a human-like agent to do their Web3 banking, right? Instead of going to the bank and talking to the teller, well, you're talking to the agency teller, and it will do all your Web3 things for you, right? So that's the idea, and it will all be based on the graph. That's the data, and hopefully the LLMs also will be running on the graph. So yeah, really a great platform to build this on. So yeah, and by the way, if you want to try out Agent C, you can go to agentc.xyz and try out the future of the graph for humans.
Yeah, the intersection of crypto, Web3, and AI, I think, is going to be really fascinating and a huge story over the next decade. And one of the questions that people have with AI is, what are we going to train these models on, right? Like, who kind of dictates the truth that, the AI can then kind of answer questions against? And I think this is, a big reason why we started working on the graph when we did, because we think that, no one company should, be the source of truth for, humanity's knowledge and information. And so all of these different components are going to start coming together in a really interesting way. And so with the world of data services, we're really opening up permissionlessness. So you can have maximum amount of innovation, and people can build their own data services, and we can have a lot of freedom and experimentation. And then on top, we want to see how can we organize that knowledge and information still in a decentralized way, but to try to get to more of like a global graph of organized information. And I think when we then put that together also with AI, where we can start to train the AI on, decentralized organized graph, that really does give us a sort of, foundation where, we can have, a really intelligent agent that we can use, but that really puts together knowledge from, the sum total of humanity's knowledge.
Yeah, it also lowers the barrier to entry when it comes to using and leveraging the graph, because you can leverage it in so many different ways, ask so many different questions in many different languages. So I think that that's really exciting as well.
Just one new data service being mentioned in the world of data services objective. And another one, and I'll go to you, Chris Wessels, on this one, about files and the addition of file data services. What can you tell us about that? That's also another really important data service being discussed here.
Thanks, Nick. So file data service is a marketplace, like all data services. And in this case, it's a marketplace for files. And files are really powerful because they're basically like a generic container for any data, right? So there's a very broad array of use cases. Our approach, in coming up with file data service and where we focused our efforts has been close to home, and specifically the indexer community and their needs. Indexers deal with a lot of files every day as part of the stack that they run to be an indexer. And that, includes things like Subgraph snapshots, Firehose flat files, Substreams cache files, archive node snapshots. There's a lot of data that indexers have to deal with. And so on the supply side, all of these indexers have that data and would be able to readily monetize that data by selling it to other indexers through file data service. So there's a lot of kind of existing embedded supply. And on the demand side, today, indexers really recreate the data that they produce and serve to the graph network. So each indexer does a lot of duplicative and quite heavy computational work. And so on the demand side, if there was the ability for indexers to acquire this data without having to recreate it themselves, so long as that was cheaper than recreating it, which you can certainly assume it would be, there's a lot of entrenched demand as well. So that's the community that we're focused on at first. And we hope to, really impact the indexing market in a positive way. And that should have downstream positive effects for the market as a whole and drive good outcomes for data consumers too.
I think it's also a really interesting case study because it's not as if indexes that there isn't kind of this informal file sharing that happens between indexes already. Like we've seen that kind of emergent behavior where indexes actually are sharing snapshots and helping each other in that way. And this is, I guess, enabling them to do that in a way that's a bit more structured, that leverages a bunch of the primitives that are already available as a part of the graph. So I think that this is a great thing of sort of seeing some clues and realizing that there's actually an opportunity to create something based off of, as you say, supply and demand that's already latent, is already there.
Just to add, I think it adds structure to that sharing that's going on today, right? So as we think about all these new data services coming online, that's a lot more files that we need to manage. And the easier way we can build the automation around the Kubernetes stack that's going to help, bring the snapshot in and automatically start a node with the latest snapshot, that's going to make the life for indexers much easier. So it's really required for that.
Well, that's a lot of discussion about just one objective in the roadmap. And it's very exciting to see this world of data services. And again, encourage anybody that wants to learn more to go read the blog post, because there's a lot more than what we're able just to discuss today. But as you can tell, this is an incredible objective with a very promising future for the graph and the way people will interact with the protocol. In the interest of time, let's move on to the second objective and make sure we explore that one a little bit as well, because it is also super exciting. It'll have a lot of impact on users of the graph. The second objective is called developer empowerment. And maybe I'll go to you, Adam, on this one, but talk to me about how the initiatives and milestones associated with this objective will lower the barriers and create a better experience for users of the graph.
So I think that this really does come back to that core initial user, that developer who wants to get access to data that's on chain, that's difficult to parse. They're trying to get access to it. Subgraph starts to address that problem. With the network, there's obviously that provides them a way to deploy that to a distributed pool of indexers. But we'll acknowledge that there's still a ways to go in terms of that developer experience, making sure that it is super streamlined, that it is easy to use, that a lot of the things that developers kind of expect when they're using a data service from anywhere, a lot of those sort of standards, we have certain things which are a bit unusual, whether that's that you're making on-chain payments and that it's a sort of a more of a trustless exchange. We think that with in the fullness of time, those things will just become a standard part of the way in which people do publish and manage their APIs and access data in general. But we also acknowledge that today we need to make sure that it is a smooth experience, that people can easily pay for their data services, that those on-chain costs are minimized or abstracted away, and that the people essentially, when they come to the graph, they get the reliability, robustness, and resilience that they need for their applications. Because when people deploy to the graph or any service, that it's hugely important moment or responsibility for the graph, because an app's trusting you to essentially deliver their data to their end users. They're really making a bet on you, and so we need to make sure that the tools, the experiences that people are having when they are deploying on the graph are best in class. And so we're continuing to push the envelope and try and push forward the user experience there.
This particular objective will note that there's kind of 3 sub-objectives, if you will, or sub-initiatives tied to this objective. And one of them is Sunrise. And so I want to double click on Sunrise for a moment here, because that also was another big ecosystem announcement and a lot of enthusiasm about that. So for context and kind of how this all fits in, Tegan, maybe I'll ask you, the Edge and Node team led Sunrise. Talk to us about what Sunrise is and the impact you're expecting it to have.
Yeah, absolutely. So last week, the Sunrise plan was shared, and this is our main focus at Edge and Node. So with the Sunrise, we're really aiming to deliver on the commitment we made 5 years ago. So we started with the hosted service. We got product market fit with the hosted service, but now that the network is fully ready for the masses, it's time to upgrade everyone from that hosted service to the decentralized network. And that's really what this Sunrise plan is all about. And we want to make that as seamless as possible. So what we're doing is we are going live with an upgrade indexer on the Graph network. We'll actually forego indexer rewards. There will just be GRT query fees for these subgraphs that upgrade to the network. And what that means is that the 40 chains that the hosted service supports today will be live on the network, and there'll be transparency there. So you'll be able to see all of those chains, the queries, the subgraphs, and that's really exciting. And then for the chains that aren't yet fully supported with indexer rewards, those will go through a governance process. But I'm hoping that with this increased transparency, that will help that governance process be a bit more seamless and smooth. So yeah, we're super excited. And as Adam mentioned, we are working to improve developer experience, and then we're improving syncing speeds on the studio as well as support. So more on that coming soon.
We've already started adding new chains to the network even after MIPS. There's a process called the chain integration process. So working hand in hand with Edge and Node and other teams. And we already have chains like Optimism, Starknet, and Zora chain in progress. So anyone looking to have their chain integrated with the graph, just head to the forum and start that process.
I think we could talk endlessly about developer empowerment because this is so core to everything that we do. And I think we're aware that a lot of the milestones we're working on, even when they're done, we won't be done with developer empowerment. Essentially, when you give developers new tools, they find new things they can't do and new things they want to do. And so I think that we'll be continually finding like areas for improvement, whether that's in the Subgraph GraphQL API, where we're looking to make improvements. But I know that Alex, well, I may be jumping ahead, but Alex has lots of great stuff cooking on the Substreams developer experience side. And so I think that this is just the start. And I think that what's on this list is only the tip of the iceberg of some of the things that we're looking to add for the developer ecosystem in general.
Yeah, maybe I can triple right click on that or something like that. Yeah, for the Substream, talking about developer experience, and that's paramount to the success and adoption of a tech. And I have to be honest, I love simplicity. And right now, Substreams have not been simple to the extent that I would love them to be. So to be really frictionless, there's some complexity. And so right now we're working on addressing that. Want to simplify the developer experience to even have tools that allow you to not code at all. A lot of the things in Substreams are modules, and we can do a lot of code generation efforts. And we're doing that for Ethereum, for different networks, for different types of code generation, for different patterns, some of which we're piping into different data stores and whatnot. And so we're building a thing, it will be shipped by then, substreams.dev, to be a registry of Substreams packages. And on that, have a few tools around so that you can discover the modules from the community, what I call sort of that shared intelligence layer, these folks around that have crafted intelligence about what's on those blockchains, and refined it and found a price out of some really obscure pieces of data that sometimes the blockchain exposes. And so, yeah, we're working on some of those tools. So that registry, substreams.dev, but also we'll have something called the Builder, maybe change his name, but a place where you can, perhaps with a simple form, generate a Substreams module and start streaming it directly on the web, so that you don't even need to run, I don't know, Rust and compile some stuff on your machine, but you can. Like, you can take the source code generated and tweak it and improve it, but you'll have that sort of really high level, frictionless option. And then you could do some stuff like that. So that's the Builder we're thinking about, having those tools to simplify. And then a GUI, a place where you don't need to install anything on your laptop or your server tower. And you can stream Substreams directly from the browser. And so a new GUI tool, sort of a studio, so you can try things and look at the data, juicy data directly. And there's another thing, Adam, what was the other thing? Builder, sure, no. Oh, a thing to eventually deploy your stuff. So you want a service and then you want to deploy it. So it'd be cool if you could go deploy. So think of that place where you deploy Subgraphs. Well, we'll fit that somewhere there, but to be able to deploy those new world of data services. So we're trying to do a fast, go-to-market strategy there, so people can try to give us your feedback. By the way, all you there, go try these things and give us your feedback. It'd be really awesome. Because there's a lot of new tech, new and development environments also. So I really love the feedback there. Yeah, so that's the things. And yeah, that covers a lot of the things we're doing for Substreams. Yes, okay.
I think one thing that I'm super conscious of is coming back to the thing you mentioned at the start around simplicity and making sure that stuff is that what we're building, even as we're adding this additional functionality, is still super legible and people understand and they know where to go. When you arrive in the ecosystem, we can essentially direct people in the right place for them. We're going from a place where things were simple. There's one data service to many data services, and I think we need to make sure that we land messaging and help people find what they're looking for. Particularly, as you said, that even within Substreams, there's so much innovation and so many new interfaces and new ways of interacting with that.
You're good, man.
I've interested you. I think one thing which has been an innovation over the last year within the ecosystem is Graph Client. I think Graph Client is super cool and is definitely something that we want to get into more people's hands. But I think it'll become increasingly important as there are more interfaces. I don't know if you can talk a bit about Graph Client and how it fits into improving developer experience?
First of all, I'm really excited about this initiative because I think kind of like the web, the more, like you mentioned before, like the more people are starting to use something, the more they want to tweak it, the more they need different tools. And we want to support everything. And I think I'm mostly excited about what all the community will build, because right now it's, we open up to multiple data services, but that's maybe just the start. Like maybe we're actually starting here to build a protocol of how anyone can build services and all kinds of. So I think we don't even know like what the future would look like. I think in the context of your question of Graph Client, we took a lot of ideas and concepts from what we've seen in the regular web development, and where there, everyone can build like everything, and that's what's going to happen here now. And then as everyone can provide any types of service, sometimes you want something that will translate each and every type of data into a unified language. And what Graph Client is doing, it has the power to do is, first of all, just as a client, it helps you with all like the, let's say, the common issues that you have when you query data. So there's a lot of like cool features there, but there's also some interesting features there that I think many people are not aware of, which is it can also take basically any API protocol that is not GraphQL and translate that into a GraphQL representation. So I think that's also interesting because let's have an example like a very powerful client application, but now we have multiple data services in all kinds of formats, and maybe some of the data that you need is actually even not not even Web3, like Web2 data from other sources. One of the things that the Graph Client can do is automatically translate each of those sources into a graph representation and then to merge them all into a single graph. So I think as we go through this new period, I think the explosions of things we're going to see is amazing, and I think also that will mean that more people will discover more, powerful and interesting features for Graph Client specifically.
So that's Substreams, that's Graph Client, and of course there's a host of other tools and information with this objective. Another super cool thing is the free query plan that comes with Subgraph Studio. Vincent, I think that's going to unlock a lot of innovation and use cases with the graph. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think one really important keyword that Alex mentioned a couple of times is frictionless. We want to make the whole experience as frictionless as possible. That not only applies to the developer experience, but also applies to the onboarding experience. And I think having a free query plan really allows anyone to access the graph, to access subgraphs in a frictionless way. And that includes, people who just want to try it out, play with it, maybe in a hackathon, right? Like students who just want to use the graph to build something without going through the entire process of getting GRTs and so on. So, having this like free allowance monthly allows a lot more people to be able to onboard into the platform.
One last thing before we move on from this objective would just be a quick talk about Subgraph Radio and Graphcast. And this is something that GraphOps has been working on to contribute. Chris, if you could just provide an overview of those two tools.
Absolutely. So just as I guess for anyone who doesn't know, Graphcast is a peer-to-peer messaging network that exists alongside the protocol. And basically allows protocol participants to exchange gossip at very low cost, right? The cost of bandwidth. And this unlocks new forms of coordination that would otherwise just be too expensive to do on chain. So that's Graphcast. Subgraph Radio is the node software that indexers run in order to gossip with one another about subgraphs. And a feature that we recently shipped on Subgraph Radio is called upgrade pre-syncing. And upgrade pre-syncing actually allows subgraph developers to signal their intent to upgrade a subgraph ahead of time. And they do this by using the Graphcast CLI, which is just a command that they can copy paste out of our docs. to send a signed message to indexers of their intent to upgrade. And any indexers running Subgraph Radio will pick this message up and will begin syncing the new deployment for that subgraph. And Subgraph developers can monitor the progress of that syncing. And then once they're happy that enough indexers have reached the tip of the chain for their new Subgraph deployment, they can then go ahead and migrate the signal over. So that feature is targeted at minimizing any downtime when Subgraph developers choose to upgrade to a new version.
Call to action there for any indexers listening. Please run Subgraph Radio and share any feedback you have.
Chris, you're good.
I love it. That's great. So that's the second objective on this new era roadmap, which has 5 objectives. And the third one is protocol evolution and resiliency. So maybe, Eva, if I can come to you on this one, let's set a little more context for this particular objective. Why is this on the roadmap and what does it mean?
Thanks for the question. So really, this is encompassing everything around the protocol evolving to meet the needs of these new data services and new innovations. So one of the things on the roadmap is a verifiable fire hose. So building off of the work that Streaming Fast has been doing and World of Data Services, but enabling a solution that could actually work for EIP 4444 in terms of retrieving that archive data. We also have what you might have heard of as Graph Horizon that maybe Edge and Node can speak more to, which is, again, evolving the protocol to be a bit simpler, more efficient, and actually just enabling the protocol to support these data services modularly. So whether it's a need for arbitration or a new UI, or maybe even a new payment system, we want to make sure that as the graph does grow into this larger marketplace for all types of data, that every type of user and data type has the optimal experience for it.
The protocol's been running in production now for almost 3 years. And so we've been able to gather a lot of data and just observe, how this thing runs in the wild. I think we've been pretty slow to make changes to the protocol because, when you're coordinating so many people, right, there's so many indexers, delegators, curators, subgraph developers, you don't want to just be making changes on a whim. And so, folks have been really analyzing a lot of this stuff and making suggestions and discussions. And so, I think really the changes that we're going to see coming out now are like the culmination of really several years of, observing, designing, and iterating. And I think, we do want people in the ecosystem to participate in those discussions. So, many of these are GIPs that either have just been announced or about to be announced. And so we really invite everyone who's part of this ecosystem to participate in those discussions and help, impact the evolution of the protocol.
Again, Horizon keeps coming up and people are talking about it. There's a forum post and other things in the community. For anybody that's watching this, that this is the first time they're hearing Horizon, what can you tell us about what it is and how it kind of fits into this roadmap?
Yeah, absolutely. So Horizon is you can think of it like a V2 of the protocol. And there's 3 areas that I'm really excited about Horizon. The first is around permissionlessness. So reducing the need to ask for permission to participate, make changes, get involved. That's the first piece. So kind of reducing barriers to entry, including governance, reducing governance. The second is around efficiency, as Eva mentioned. So you want to make sure that people are getting a good amount of value for the value that they're putting in. So really kind of minimizing waste. And then the third is around simplicity. So making it easier to understand for each of the roles that Yaniv mentioned, just kind of simplifying all of that. And we're also working to improve the token economics. So if you're interested, as Yaniv mentioned, we are taking feedback. We want to hear from you. We're not going to pretend like Horizon is 100% baked today because it's not, and we actually need your help to bake it. So you can reach out on the forum. You can also reach out one-to-one if you don't want to share your comments publicly. We're here to chat through anything.
I'd like to add something, if I may, on Horizon and the permissionless nature of it, because I think it represents a really significant step forward for the graph. And I think, we've kind of touched on a little bit in today's call, but there are so many use cases for data, right? Far too many to count. And they span from things like more transactional workloads that subgraphs serve really well today, through to analytics workloads that are not served very well today, through to streaming workloads that are, completely different in their nature and the data that they require. And something that really rings true across all of these use cases is that there is no silver bullet, right? There's no single tech stack, a data pipeline that solves all of those problems perfectly. And so I think something that's really special about Horizon and the permissionless nature of data service development on top of Horizon is that it represents moving from a single enshrined tech stack, right, where the graph is subgraphs and the tech stack that powers them, to an open marketplace where any data service developer can bring a new tech stack to the table and leverage the network effects of the graph and the existing groundswell of participants and standards and suppliers and consumers to build a low trust, decentralized version of their tech stack, of their data service. And what Horizon really provides is the ability to have economic security backing the data and the query results that ultimately go to consumers.
Another component of this objective is a new payment mechanism, Scalar Tap. Lexi, what can you tell us about that, and how is it different than what's currently happening?
Yeah, so we're delving a little bit more into the weeds, but I mean, the TLDR, if you need to really know why that's important, is that it enables the trustlessness of consumers on the graph. So it's a very important prong of the whole push for trustlessness and reliability, right, for the whole graph system. So more into the details, the technical details. We need to deliver off-chain micropayments to indexers with each GraphQL query today. And when I say micropayments, they're very small, really, really small. So we cannot do that on-chain. That would be extremely expensive. Even on an L2, it would be ridiculously expensive. So today what we're doing is that we're settling on an aggregate of those micropayments on allocation closure. And so that's settled on-chain periodically, but we don't really have the system today to do it both trustless and very fast and parallel micropayment system in which we could the indexers could generate their aggregate and just post it on chain to get their money. So there is a trust assumption on the indexer side. They currently trust that the gateway, which is currently run by Edge and Node, will pay them their query fees. So that's the gist of the current situation. And so we've been working a lot for the past year and a half or 2 years. I don't know. It's very crazy on a solution to this problem. And so now we have a new protocol that's called Scalar Tap that is really getting very close to the finish line. And it enables fast, efficient, parallel, one-way micropayments. And the trick that it uses is microtrust, which are it's a simpler alternative to snarks. And it just means that the indexer will indeed trust their customer, but up to a certain amount, which could be very small. It could be like, let's say 10 GRT maximum, right? And the indexers will regularly ask their customers to generate a new running aggregate of their query fees very regularly in such a way that it stays under that trust limit, right, of, let's say, 10 GRT, right? And then whenever the indexer is ready to settle on-chain, they would just post what we call the voucher, which is that a signed aggregate signed by the customer. They can post it on-chain and then pull money from their escrow account on-chain. And that guarantees that they'll get their money. As long as they have a voucher, the indexer can at any time without asking for permission to anybody, just post it on chain and get their money, right? Trust, assistance, safety are the main points there.
Well, you can't talk about the evolution of the protocol without thinking about where it's been and where it's heading. And so, Vincent, maybe I'll talk to you about this, but there is this conception that the graph is experimental, and that may have been true at one point, but it's certainly not the case anymore. Talk to us about your experience querying the network and what that's been like for you.
Yeah, for sure. So we've built hundreds of subgraphs so far, and we have huge query volumes that we've been powered by the hosted service for like a year and a half now. And early this year, I guess 6 months ago, we've started this kind of work stream of migrating all of our subgraphs from the hosted service to the decentralized network. And obviously, as a part of the migration, we want to move the query volumes from the hosted service over to the network as well. And to be very honest, initially I was a little bit skeptical, like, hey, decentralized network, how could it be as performant as the hosted service, which is, like GCP clusters, like extremely powerful and all that. So we did an experiment. We actually did 2 experiments, one around the latency, the query latency, comparing the hosted service with the decentralized network, and one around reliability. And we actually saw better numbers coming from the network on both fronts. And for the decentralized network specifically, the query latency was actually a lot lower, sometimes half as much of the hosted service. So we were pleasantly surprised by that, and obviously that's definitely a good thing to see for the community as well.
And I want to double click here because so many people told us for so long that was never going to happen and that decentralization will never be better. So I just want to take a moment and kind of look at how far we have come, where we're kind of proving the naysayers wrong. And even with that, we're improving the experience of upgrading to the network with the Sunrise. So it's going to get even better.
We've drawn a particular focus on some really cool elements of these first 3 objectives. Let's talk about the final 2, and maybe we can kind of do a little bit of a speed round for these. So the 4th objective is to optimize indexer performance. And Matthew Darwin, maybe I'll throw this one to you. How does some of the milestones and initiatives being proposed here make life easier for indexers?
Well, I guess I would start with the world of data service, and everything we're talking about here makes life way more complicated for indexers, because now you don't have just one blockchain like Ethereum with one data service like Subgraphs. Now we've got Firehose, we've got Substreams, we've got SQL, we've got file data, we've got all these things. So in order to then remove a bunch of that complexity from the indexer's life, we need to really think about not just writing documentation. Documentation is good, but we really need to think about automation, right? We can't expect indexers to figure out how to run all this tech. It's just massive and getting bigger every second. So, hats off to, the GraphOps team, who's done a great job starting with the Kubernetes Launchpad. And that's basically our launchpad to add more automation to the rest of the tool chain that the indexers are going to need. So Firehose and Substreams is kind of next at the top of the list, I think. Probably file data services and getting those snapshots so they can restore back up, this kind of stuff, and just then taking the feedback from the community about how do we make the indexer life better. So people who want to run on cloud, they can run on cloud, or if they want to run on bare metal, they can do that, or mix and match however makes sense for them. So it's a lot of work here, because the awesome amount of development around new services that we want to bring to the world.
So for everything that we've been talking about, our excitement of bringing new functionality to developers, we can't do that without indexers and making sure that indexers are empowered, to Matthew's point. And yeah, it's been great to see indexers from the core communities stepping up, but also from the broader ecosystem. We've got such a vibrant, passionate group of indexers contributing to the graph. We really appreciate their feedback, their thoughts, and the way they help. They push us forward as well with feedback, which can be very very, very direct, but it makes sure that we are pushing the graph in the right direction. So big shout out to the indexers and that community.
Can't make it better without feedback.
Really appreciate all the panelists for joining us, and really need to jump then to the final objective, which is interconnected graph of data. And I just want to throw it to you, Yaniv, because I don't think people know exactly what is meant by interconnected graph of data. What does that mean, and how does this fit into the roadmap?
Yeah, so it's a really big idea, and it really stems from, you know, the genesis of the graph. So from the beginning, you know, the vision for the graph was to build a global graph of all of the world's public knowledge and information organized and served in a decentralized way. And so that implies some amount of composition and unification into this sort of global graph. And, you know, in order to have that, we need to be able to organize knowledge and information. And so when we launched the network, initially, we had this role of curators. And the job of curators, you know, is supposed to be to organize information on the graph. And, you know, now we're close to 3 years in, and I think we've seen that, you know, the graph has been really, you know, powerful and well adopted for helping developers access blockchain data. But we haven't really seen it, you know, be used by communities to actually organize free-form knowledge and information. And so I think, you know, the realization is that we haven't really created the tools to enable that use case and now allow people to really organize information on the graph. So that's a first step of what we want to tackle here. And so the thing that makes that possible, there's really two components to it. The first is knowledge graphs. So, you know, even as an individual, you know, maybe you participate in an industry, or you're knowledgeable on some academic fields, or, you know, you have some interest areas, and, you know, can you actually, you know, put that knowledge onto the graph? And knowledge graphs are a really powerful tool for enabling people to just organize knowledge and information, right? So let's say that, you know, maybe you're working in the health space, and you're knowledgeable on certain treatments or vitamins, and, you know, like what are, you know, the symptoms of not taking certain vitamins, or what are the benefits of certain treatments. And so can you, you know, organize all of that stuff, put it on the graph? The second piece is, can we give communities the tools to get to consensus on that knowledge and information? So as an industry, you know, as a, you know, an academic field, as a country, state, or city, you know, can you get people to agree on the facts? And, you know, I think that's a really big issue that we're facing as a society right now, is that we don't know what to trust, you know, and we need better systems for getting to shared facts. And so, you know, I think the graph has a really big role to play in the structuring of society and addressing those fundamental issues of organizing knowledge and information. And we'll be able to do that if we can give communities tools to organize their knowledge and information and come to consensus and build this global unified graph of all of the world's public knowledge and information, but to do that in a decentralized way, right? Because no one company, no one person is an authority, you know, and can ultimately be trusted to know everything. And so we need a decentralized system for arriving at truth, and we're going to try to work towards that.
There's just so much information to cover. It would be impossible to do it in an hour, but I appreciate every member of the core dev team here that joined today on this panel to talk about these objectives and to explain a little bit of the vision behind it all. So as we come to an end here, I thought it would be fun to do a lightning round. So in the interest of time, everybody has about, 20 to 30 seconds to answer this question, but let's do this and go around the horn here with everybody. Given all the aspects of the new era, and like I said, there's a bunch of stuff going on here, what are you personally most excited about as a builder, as somebody contributing within the graph ecosystem? Maybe we'll get started with you, Eva, but let's start it here. What excites you most?
So many things, but I think the most exciting is this vision of the graph being a true marketplace for all types of data. It's still pretty challenging to get data from blockchains, aside from subgraphs, for all different types of use cases. And the more Web3 grows, the more use cases there are. And so creating that unifying platform that is the graph as the main access point for every single data need, whatever question you have, I think is so exciting from a user experience perspective.
Adam, I'll throw it to you. How about you? What's got you most excited?
So I think a lot. My background is building subgraphs. I'm super psyched to build great tools for this sort of Web3 developer ecosystem every day, and do that in the ecosystem of such talented people pushing forward on so many fronts is incredibly energizing. And I take a lot of inspiration from that.
Hagen?
Decentralization, usually it's not very sexy. You don't really get to have this exciting new roadmap and what's next and what's next and what's next. But the Graph Foundation has found a way to unlock making decentralization sexy by empowering all of the core developers. So I'm really excited to see us execute on that roadmap.
How about for you, Vincent?
Yeah, I want to echo Eva on just the graph evolving beyond just subgraphs into, I guess, the world of data services. There's now like Substreams, there's LLMs, SQL data services, and really like this whole suite of data products that anyone can use. So that's definitely something I'm very looking forward to.
Uri?
For me, the most interesting thing is just the unblocking of use cases and developers in the ecosystem. Like, I think that's like, I personally have like tons of ideas of things where it will all go to, but I think the most exciting thing for me is that it doesn't have to be from our ideas. Like now, like we just unblock, and every time you unblock, you get new ideas and new things that you didn't even expect to see. So I'm really excited about the things that I don't even know that will come.
How about for you, Matthew Darwin?
I think Yuri and I are quite aligned on the same page here. The fact we're bringing a whole bunch of new things is going to unlock things we have no idea or no concept we can't dream of today. So, a few years ago, did everybody think, the main way of accessing the blockchain was going to be through subgraphs? So probably not. Well, maybe Yaniv did. But, so what's going to happen tomorrow? So the future, it's open, it's exciting. That's what I'm interested in.
Alex Bourget, what's got you excited about it?
I'm excited, you know that. I'm excited to be delivering and to deliver on that promise of the fastest and most powerful data systems on Earth. And, to deliver on that multi-chain strategy, all in this simple and small deployable systems that we can ship to the network, and that folks are going to be happily, serving for us. Right? I'm excited to bring that power on a network. Mucho data.
How about you, Chris Wessels, with the amazing background?
I'd have to echo, what everybody else has highlighted. I think bringing new data services to the network, and the real world impact of being able to serve those new consumers and use cases is enormously exciting. I'm also personally very excited to bring the indexer community along on this journey. I think, the past has shown us that the graph can actually have quite a great impact on the blockchain ecosystem by virtue of, running so many of these systems at such significant scale, and data being at the heart of, pretty much everything. We really tend to push the state of the art, and excited to see the innovations that come to blockchain clients and Firehose and all the layers of infrastructure that power Web3.
Alexi, what's got you excited?
I think it's going to be somewhat similar to what's been said already, but I'm going to push further. And I think it's very interesting to see that we're expanding our horizons to more data services. So we'll serve more data from more blockchains, all kinds of data, and maybe we'll eventually add data that's not from blockchains, and maybe then we'll do compute. And where's the limit, right? AWS, we're coming for you, maybe. I don't know. How big are we going to go? So that's, I think, that's what I'm excited about. We're going to eat everything, right?
Conclude this lightning round. Yaniv Tal, how about you?
Well, I think it's just so incredible to see all of the work that's happening from all of the different core devs on these really deep technical problems. But, all of this that we're doing right now, it's really about, finishing to build out the infrastructure. And what's really exciting to me is that I don't think we've even begun to see the impact that this infrastructure is going to have on the world. And I think that very soon we're going to actually be able to see the graph and Web3 permeate into the world and into society at large. And that it can be an incredible force for good. And so I'm really excited to see what that does for unlocking human potential and human flourishing, to give people hope in a new path forward for society and for civilization. And I think it's going to happen a lot faster than maybe people are expecting right now, but that it's going to be a really beautiful journey.
I really want to thank again all the core dev panelists that joined today. It's an exciting time to be a contributor at the Graph and to see this incredible vision with the new era of the Graph and a lot of information. So as I said at the beginning, it's impossible to go through it all here today. So I encourage anybody that wants to learn more to go read the blog post. You can also join the Graph's Discord, get involved in the Telegram. There's plenty of people that can answer your questions. And if you want to join the Graph community and help build this vision, there's plenty of opportunities. You can become an indexer, become a delegator. You can also become a Graph advocate or join Builders DAO. So plenty of ways for anybody who wants to contribute and get involved. They're able to do it. And all those links will be posted with this video, and you'll see links to these different things. So again, thank you to the Edgenode marketing team for help coordinating and setting this up. Thank you to all the panelists for joining us. And I hope to see all of you in the Graph ecosystem. Have a great day, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, man.